Hey, welcome back. This is Wake Up Live, our second season of our podcast with our great friends and artists. Started last season with Zonti, and now we have the privilege of having Roy Tosh with us. Man, thanks for being here. You know, we're just diving into a little bit deeper into what living for God is like. Last time you and I talked, we talked about identity. We talked about purpose, and you know, discovering that purpose is awesome. It's great, and I think a lot of people think they have their purpose, right? So, and we automatically assume that purpose means I got to be doing something all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think it might be at an epidemic level in our world this day because everybody is like diving in, side hustling, you know, right? Like
get a third side hustle,
and thinking that this is the way life is now. And we're hearing so much about burnout. We're hearing so much about people dealing with anxiety. They just can't function because the pace of life is too much, or it's just too hard to deal with and handle. So, and even in the Christian perspective, you're a Christian artist, I'm a pastor, even we can feel the pressure of having to deliver and to be active and to be crazy going all the time. How does that come about in your world?
Yeah, man. So it's very there's a lot of comparison, or can be, in the music industry. Are you gonna one up this guy? And from a competitive level, you know, that's good, right? You know, Paul talks about being an athlete and competing and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I think from a competitive standpoint, some of that can be good, but man, you can burn out if you're just go all the time, right? You can really burn out quick and run into some walls. And, you know, for me personally, I've definitely ran into stages of burnout.
Okay.
And, you know, I think that there's a verse in Hebrews 4:12 that talks about how God has a Sabbath rest for us. And I don't think they're talking about a physical day, although we have, you know, we hold to the Sabbath and, you know, but I think he's talking about more of like this rest in our souls, this peace that surpasses our understanding, right? And how we can cease from this work and this go, and actually work from the place of rest instead of striving and I got to make this happen. And so I'm not an expert at that. In fact, I am the achiever of all achievers. I am, you know, if I take a personality test, I rank high on like goal-oriented, achiever, driven, you know, all that stuff. But in my career, like and even as a Christian, right? You know, I think if we're not careful, what started out to be this love relationship with God, you know, speaking to my relationship with God now, you know, can become all about what I do for God, instead of being with God. And in the being with God and the intimacy with God, there's all the grace you need to do what God has asked you to do, right? And so anyways, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but I've experienced that burnout firsthand, and it's horrible. It's tough.
I always go back to this quote from Oswald Chambers, My Utmost for His Highest. Great
devotional book I read, by the way.
Really, it's you know, he has, I forget what date it is, but he basically says the greatest threat to our devotion to God is our service to Him.
Dude. You know, the OGs in the faith, bro. That is a whole bar right there.
How do these guys write this kind of stuff?
That is so good.
When I read that, I felt the smack on my face.
Say it one more time.
The greatest threat to our devotion to God is our service to Him. So yeah, it's that achieving, and I would think especially someone who feels called to serve God, like yourself, like myself. to feel that, man, how many times have I felt like I'm sitting at home doing very little. I have moments that happens, not a lot. And I feel lazy. I feel like there should be something I should be doing right now,
right,
for God, because I'm called to serve the kingdom, right? I'm called to serve the King of the universe, and just sitting here and just taking a breath and relaxing, this feels wrong,
right.
And I think there's a lot of people who feel that to take that time to disconnect, to sit, to just be, it's not right. And especially here in America.
It's like anti-culture too. Like,
right.
You're always on the go. Like,
right.
There's no being still anymore.
No.
It's constant distraction, social media, phone,
yes,
commercials, advertisements. Like, we're inundated with it on a daily basis.
Well, and let me ask you a practical question for you. You're a Christian artist. I mean, you have to eat.
Right.
You have to put food on the table. You got a fourth kid coming.
Yeah.
Right. So
pray for
you for sure. I mean, you gotta have a place to live. You have to have a vehicle, put gas in it. So money is necessary. We can't say that like just walk into the mountains and survive. Like
no,
right. We have to work
hard.
We got to work, and
absolutely.
especially in your case, if you're not performing, I would assume you're not earning.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So how do you get to the place where your livelihood relies on your activity, but yet you know the need you have for not being active?
Right. Right. Yeah. There's so many different ways I could take this, but I think for me is having a peace in, deep within our hearts. And I can have a million things going on and still not be moved by all the whirlwind that life can be sometimes. And that is, again, this place of rest, this place of surrender. I love John 15, for example. Okay. Jesus says, abide in me and I will abide in you. And he actually makes this phrase. He says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Yeah. Now, we can do a lot of things apart from Jesus. Like, I know what that's like, right?
Right.
But he says, no, if you want to bear real fruit and you want my life to shine through you, you want the fruit of the Spirit to come forth, all this stuff, apart from remaining connected to Jesus, it's not going to come. Like when a branch is connected to that vine, right? Fruit is natural.
Yes.
It's not forced. It just comes natural as a byproduct of being connected to the vine. And so, the word for me is stay, and you could translate abide to mean stay as well.
Mm-hmm. Stay.
It's to remain in this unbroken fellowship with God. And that transcends all the stereotypical mindsets of I went to church, I went to a building on Sunday, so now I'm good for unbroken fellowship. Hey, stay here. And so for me, on my Christian journey, I fell head over heels in love with God.
Okay.
I have all this passion. I'm doing all this stuff. And I think one of the things I like talking about is that I think if we're not careful again, our Christian life can become all about what Oswald said. I love that quote. It can become all about our service to God. Mm-hmm. Do this, join this group, go overseas and do this trip. Do. You need to study this, and you need to do more and do more and do more, right? And for me personally, I was doing all of it. I was as zealous gets. So I'm doing all this stuff.
Right.
And years go by, and then the pressures of life come. I have a couple kids, and I hit this place where nobody knew. I knew all the language. I can talk the talk. I can talk about doctrine. I can share a wealth of knowledge because I've studied for so long. but my heart was starting to become hard. And my relationship with God was suffering big time. Nobody knew. And so now I was doing everything. I was in small groups. I was serving every Sunday. I was saying yes to every opportunity. And then me, like, you're constantly, when you're doing, well, you're a pastor. So like, you're constantly pouring out, right?
Yeah.
And everyone always wants something from you as an artist, like sliding your demon. Yo, you want to do this, do that. Like, so everyone just wants to take, right? And that's fine. Sorry, that sounds like selfish. Like, I don't mind it, but I was burnt out.
Yeah.
And I was in this place where my relationship with God was not thriving at all. And of course, you feel ashamed even like mentioning that I'm supposed to be this on fire believer for God, right?
Yeah.
And but that's where I was at. I was doing all of my Christian duty, and it was all out of my strength. And I think there's something beautiful about the Christian life is not by might nor by strength, but by the power of my spirit, says the Lord.
Yeah.
So it's this daily death to self that Paul talked about. In Galatians 2:20, right? I am crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me, right? So it's this daily process of dying to my will and surrendering, letting go. In other words, I have a song called Those Hands, and there's a line in the hook that's like gold. It's like, surrender is the place that I should have began. And in surrender, there's great freedom. And to me, that's the life that Jesus modeled, was a yielded life. He was so dependent on his Father that he only said what he heard his Father, speak, and he only did what he saw his Father doing. That is a laid down life. Maturity in the Christian life is all about dependency upon God.
Yeah.
It's and the most mature believers are the ones that have died the most. Like, in other words, our will. Jesus said, not my will, before he went to the cross, right? But no, your will be done.
Right.
It's in the lying down of our wills and this place of surrender that we find the power to do what God has called to do. And that for me, I hit this place. I wrote a song called Close, and it was really my cry. Like, I was super confused in that season, because I was like, God, I'm doing everything you told me to do, and I'm like, I don't even feel like I have a relationship with you right now. Where are you? Just crying out, like, what do I do? I'm like, I'm burnt out. I love you, but like, I got nothing. I got nothing in the tank. And it's crazy, because it's the whole principle again of we love because he first loved us. And in remembering how much he loves me, and that first love that drew me in, from the very beginning, that place, just the simplicity of laying my life down and letting go of control. It's just a funny thing. Life, people, and circumstances we have no control over. And we try to, control them so much. We don't want to let go. But the moment we let go and trust God, we find the freedom we really want. And then again, back to service, we find the grace we need to do. There's a lot of, I'll speak for myself. There was a lot of serving that like I could do apart from the power of the Spirit, because I knew all the right things to say, etc. And I just think, there's so much more in this Christian journey. We don't have to do it on our own or do it on our own strength. It's out of remaining connected to Jesus. And even, it's interesting, Galatians 5, it says, walk by the Spirit and you will not carry out the desires of your flesh, right?
Yeah.
walk means to stay. So it's the same principle of us yielding our life, and then what is natural, what's a byproduct of walking by the Spirit? The fruit, everything we want in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. But again, I can't force those things. Right. They come as a byproduct when my will and my life is laid down and I'm connected to the vine, and the vine just bears fruit through me.
Surrender is so key, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful concept. Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the problem.
Talk to me.
I think I don't know. I'll talk about me, right? I want to surrender.
Yeah.
I want to give it all to God. The problem is I lack trust.
Yeah, man.
I lack trust. Why is it that I trust myself more than I trust God?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm doing more because I trust my actions more than I trust God's sovereignty and his providence.
Yes.
So if there isn't enough money in the bank, I trust that I could do a side hustle or work more hours or whatever, instead of trusting that if I plug into God and surrender to him, he will provide everything that I need.
Yep.
But I would rather provide it myself.
Yes.
So to me, trust for me is the problem. And I have to work at, and I have to remind myself, and I have to actually, it's almost lying to myself to saying, Milton, you do trust God even when I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I have to learn to actually do that. And it's this mental, psychological, spiritual, emotional battle in my mind to tell myself, Milton, trust God.
Yeah, every single day.
Trust God. And I've seen this in my church. So I have a church, and I'm the pastor of the church, and I lead the church. And when things don't go right, my first inclination is to do more.
Yeah.
Is to do more, so that problem can be solved, or that hole can be filled, or that position can be completed, or that task can be accomplished. That's me.
Right.
And my experience has been that doesn't work very well. Yeah. And the better thing to do is to just wait.
Yep.
To be in peace and to
Which
let
is the
God
hardest thing to do.
because here's the other problem. Now, because this thing isn't happening the way I think it should be, I'm assuming that people are looking at the situation and they're saying, you screwed up. You messed up. You weren't good enough. You're not leading well enough. Again, it goes back to identity and purpose and everything we talked about before. So I'm a spiritual mess when it comes to trust and surrender. Am I getting better at it? Praise the Lord, yes.
Yeah,
but there's still areas.
It's a process
where it's challenging. It's challenging to let it go and say, okay, God, you said you'd take care of me.
Yep.
I don't know how you're going to do it because it doesn't look like it's happening.
Right.
But I guess I'll wait.
Right.
I'll see what happens.
Yep. So good, man. Yeah, you hit it right on. Like that was like, I feel like the crux of everything we're talking about is the heartbeat of it is really trust. And that's what faith is ultimately. Mm-hmm. It's trust. It's letting go. It's waving the white flag, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
That word believe, John 3:16, right? Believe is all about surrendering. It's believing in a person, and trusting that person, right?
Right.
And it is, though, it's a daily battle. I wake up and I, by default, trust myself.
Yeah.
And in every area of my life, I got this. And the Lord's like, no, you don't.
You think you got it.
I'll let you go, though.
You said something that was interesting to me. I'd like to see if you can expand a little on that concept. You said working out of rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, those two words are complete opposites and don't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How do you do that?
So thankfully I've had he was my best man at my wedding. I've had godly examples of that. He's a business owner, and so you want to talk about work. This man
Right.
rises early, and he spends hours with the Lord, and then he is businessman the whole day. He's got 4 kids, and he's older now. His kids are all out of the house, and but he always talked to me about this rest that was available. Again, that Hebrews 4:9, this Sabbath rest. And he always talks about abiding. It's probably my favorite chapter in the whole Bible now. I love it. I cannot get enough of John 15. I
Great.
search for sermons on it. But I'm working from the place of rest. So I'll just say the opposite, and I think it'll help, maybe the viewer understand. We know what working from the place of striving is like.
For sure.
Go, do more. That wasn't good enough. Try again. Do, right? And your tank's on E, and you're just, I gotta muster up and do more, right? Striving, right? And for me personally, like the best songs that I write and the best work that I produce and the best art I create is when I'm in a place of rest internally. I'm not striving. I'm not, forcing things. I'm resting because I'm loved and I'm accepted as a child of God. And I'm working from that identity as a son to the Father, right? We talked about that. And so that provides such a peace in my soul, and where I don't have to strive. I step in the studio, and for me, obviously I record songs a lot. So like there's a level of confidence that comes because I know that God is with me, and I know he's graced me to do this. So there's no pressure. I don't have to perform. No, this is what I'm called to do. So I'm going to do it really hard. Again, working hard is great.
Yeah.
We should work hard.
Right.
Laziness, nah. Like, nope. You better be ready to grind.
Right.
And I think working hard is biblical, godly.
Agreed.
But again, there's a difference between working from a place of striving and working from a place of abiding or rest.
Right.
So that's the best way I can describe it. And again, I don't do it perfectly.
Sure.
But I've learned over time, I know the difference where I gotta, write these songs and get this stuff done. And like, I can do that and the gift is still there, but like, I don't get near as much done. Whereas if I'm calm, collected, resting in God, and I still might be crazy energetic when I step up to that microphone,
right,
and lay down some verses, right? But again, my soul is at rest. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is the way I'm receiving that is, am I working because I'm trying to feed my soul, make myself feel valuable, perform for someone or something or some idea that was planted in me, maybe by my parents or my circumstances, by my legacy? Or am I working from a place of purpose and calling where this is just who I am?
Yeah, man.
Right? It's just who I am. It's who God's called me to be. And I'm not doing it for man.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because this is who God made me to be, and I love what I do because I'm doing it for him. And he's called me to do this. And wow, so much of my ministry, Roy, was from a place of like, do they think I preach good enough?
Yeah.
Do the kids like me? When I was a youth pastor, am I cool enough? And I think the results were there when that was the motivation versus, do I love people? We talk about loving God, loving others. Am I doing this out of love?
Yeah, man.
Am I doing this out of calling? And the other one is, which I'm learning now much more than I did before, am I responding to what God is doing?
Yeah.
Versus am I trying to create the opportunity?
Yeah. Love that, man.
Yeah.
So good, man. something of what you just said just sparked something early in me where I was a baby believer, and I always would drive home from concerts and just like beat myself over the head, like you should have said this, you did, you didn't do this, and thankfully as a believer, and I'm gonna tear up just because. Just the heart of the Father in this. He knew exactly what I needed to hear in those moments. But consistently for like, I don't know, I don't want to put a time stamp on it, but I would hear this still small whisper break through all those self-condemning thoughts. And it like, there were times where like I would share the gospel and like tons of, like God would move, like it was like visible times. And even in those times I get in my car, drive home, and I just never felt like I was good enough. I never felt like it was enough. And I would hear, once, just in the thick of the storm of these self-condemning thoughts, I would hear this still small whisper, same thing, not audible, nothing weird, say, I'm so proud of you, son. And I knew it was God. And for me, it was right what I needed to hear. I needed to know that God was proud of me, for going and doing what he had called me to do. And it seems so silly, but just the simplicity of that, of knowing that God is pleased with you and proud of you. Anyways, I don't want to get on a tangent here, man, but what you said there, I was reminded of that, and early on that really shaped me, and just him speaking that over and over. It one of the biggest lies I've had to face is you're not good enough.
Yeah,
and that goes down into the littlest things. Like for example, one time I was building a backdrop wall in my studio, and I had a vision for it, and I start building it, and I get done. And I'm like, this looks horrible. And immediately the enemy's right there.
Yeah.
Told you weren't good enough. Why'd you even start? That looks terrible. Why would you think that you could do something like this? And so at this part, this was a couple of years ago, I already learned how to do warfare. I'm like, oh no, I am good enough. I do have what it takes.
Right.
And the Father's called me to get this done so I can make my YouTube videos and reach people online. And I don't have an answer today, but I'm coming back and I'm going to get it done. So anyways, long story short, I finished this cool backdrop, which you saw on a...
Yeah, that's right.
On an interview.
Good.
So like that whole wall, finished it and done, right? But just early on in those years, hearing the Holy Spirit whisper that, developed a confidence of like, no, God is proud of me. I'm his son. You know what I'm saying? Like there's nothing my kids could do to make daddy not proud of them.
Right.
Like they mess up all the time. It doesn't matter. They're my sons and daughters. I love them, and I'm still proud of them. I might not be proud of what they did in a moment, right?
Right.
But it doesn't change the fact that they're my kids, and I'm still so proud of them. So yeah.
I think there are people listening to us right now. There's someone listening who wants what you're talking about, what we're talking about, wants that rest. What's your best number one piece of advice to somebody who's seeking that?
Yeah, you're closer than you think, first of all. I think if you're even thinking, I want that, God will meet you wherever you're at. And God is so much closer. I used to think God was so far off, or, I was this horrible sinner and God wanted nothing to do with me. Direct opposite was true. He was just waiting. So I would just encourage anyone who's right there to just say yes to him, like to let go and say, Jesus, I surrender. If you've never given your life to Christ, say, Jesus, I surrender my life to you. I let go. I trust in you, that you died for me, that you resurrected from the dead, and I'm laying my life down, right? And then if you have given your life to Christ, but you're just burned out right now, I think it's simply coming to an end of ourselves, right? It's this place, if we're burnt out, like, again, we're closer than we think. In that season, I was done. Like, I was on E. I didn't want to do ministry. I didn't want to do anything. And that's the very moments where God was able to come and refuel my soul and pour his love back into my heart and fill me up again to give me the grace that I need to keep on going and to stay on mission. And, it's that process. Jesus said in order to find our lives, we must lose them. And I think, again, it's that battle of the will, right? But God's arms are wide open to anyone who's listening to this, and you don't have to clean yourself up. Like, he'll meet you just where you're at, and that goes for the believer too. Like, God wants to, God doesn't want us to be burnt out all the time and striving and all this stuff. No, he has rest for us right now in his presence. In his presence is fullness of joy. And in his right hand are pleasures forevermore, right? There's such a rest in the presence of God. And, God is always there. But I think when we come to an end of ourselves, it helps us be aware of, like, oh, I'm done, but he's still here and he's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And, again, he loved us first and he's not going anywhere. So he loves to give us the grace that we need to keep going. So, yeah.
That's good advice. Well, there you have it. You're hearing about rest, and it's something we all need. You need it. We definitely need it. And yes. I think we're going to go rest after we're done here. So, but we just hope we're encouraged today to find that rest, and we want to support you in that journey. So feel free to comment below. Let us know how you're seeking it, or if you need some help, some suggestions on some practical ways to find it. But remember, like and subscribe. Share this video with somebody who's in that rat race and doesn't know how to get out of it and really needs to understand how resting in God can help them. So thanks, Roy, man. It's been great talking to you. And I know that these conversations are going to bless a lot of people. So I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. It's an honor.
Yeah. So join us next time for our next episode, and we'll see you then.